Chapter 247 to 248. "Today is a good night," Tsunade remarked with a cat-like glee. "The Konoha Council is having a mandatory meeting discussing this year's taxes, so it seems I have 2 hours for my little uprooting project." She smirked, standing up from her crouch and looking around. She was currently in the centermost part of Konoha's underground tunnel system, perched high up on a metal beam near the roof of what appeared to be a wide training room that simply should not exist underneath Konoha. Tsunade somehow really doubted any plans of underground tunnels actually contained any sort of mention of the room below, and wondered how could Hiruzen Sarutobi overlook it? How could he not know it was there, right under his beloved village? The same village filled to the brim with Anbu under his command, who patrolled it on a daily basis, looking for anything out of the ordinary. She really didn't like the conclusion her mind was delivering, though. It was simply yet another thing to be disappointed about when it came to her sensei. Lazily putting her fingers into a cross-shaped seal, rather because of habit than any real necessity, Tsunade summoned a singular shadow clone and instantly dismissed it, giving a signal to her wood clones stationed near every single entrance to the Konoha tunnel system. It took her entire day of stealthily scouting via the abusive overuse of the wood clones' ability to meld themselves into the terrain, not unlike the Iwa's Earth Release, hiding like a mole technique. Fortunately for Tsunade, these clones came with an ability to suppress their chakra to an incredibly undetectable degree, superb sensory prowess, and actually transmitted their experiences. Otherwise her 500 clones would be detected by some root ninjas who, after all, specialized in assassination and stealth, or it would have taken her months to map all of the underground tunnels if she couldn't make effective use of the clones. The second Tsunade's wood clones got the signal. They instantly approached the entrances and used a Mokuton jutsu to change themselves back into the wood. 10 feet thick wooden lid covering the entire entrance made of chakra-enhanced Mokuton fixed in their place, blocking their respective tunnel thanks to large spikes that penetrated deep into the walls, to be perfectly precise. Upon dispelling back into wood, each clone sent Tsunade feedback, confirming the blockage was in place. Tsunade got the memories of the last clone and excitedly grinned in anticipation of what was to come. "Well then," she punched her palm, "today, nobody is leaving here alive. Let's see how Danzo fares without his loyal minions." Tsunade's shout instantly alerted the Root Anbu members practicing under her, but before they could react in any meaningful way, she was already quickly dropping down from the metal beam. Her fist impacted the ground and all hell broke. In that instant, the citizens of Konoha experienced a minuscule earthquake. It wasn't anything to worry about and only caused them a bit of imbalance for a short period of time, but the village certainly felt it. And while the citizens shrugged it off almost instantly, the unfortunate Root members in the underground training room had to put in a lot of effort to keep standing on their feet through all the shaking as the walls cracked. This was only made more difficult, as they also had to avoid the big spiderweb-like cracks forming in the ground that made for great pitfalls where feet could get stuck quite easily with just a single misstep. The occasional shrapnel made of earth, sent flying by the impact of the punch, didn't help their cases either, since they had a hard time standing, much less dodging. From 63 members of Root present in the room, 2 got crushed because of a slab of earth rising due to the punch and burying them underneath. 12 were unlucky to be hit by the earth shrapnel in fatal places, while an additional 5 were currently helplessly bleeding out as their arteries were struck. One poor lass showed his immense skill by tripping on his own foot during the quakes and breaking his own neck. 63 versus 1 instantly became 43 versus 1, who proved to be a badass. Tsunade quite liked those odds, especially since another 22 opponents had various degrees of injuries on their bodies, ranging all the way from missing balls. Earth shrapnel doesn't discriminate, to a few insignificant bruises because of losing balance and hitting the ground. Tsunade straightened out and rolled her shoulder to alleviate some tension from the punch, while also restraining her rapidly growing bloodlust. She knew how to hold grudges, and Root tried to assassinate her on a weekly basis when she was in the village during the Third Ninja War. She might not have had a chance to return the favor then. But now? Oh, she was going to enjoy this. The air stilled as the uninjured and injured Root ninjas emotionlessly readied themselves for the upcoming battle, showing just how effective Danzo's training was. Tsunade had no doubt neither of them would ever hesitate from delivering a lethal strike. Not when they completely disregarded their own injuries and even the injuries of their supposed comrades in favor of taking down their assailant. Her. As she lowered her stance, she idly thought it was a somewhat sorry sight. Not that her pity would make her hesitate. She came here today to enact slaughter, not play a caretaker. For now, her medic nin self had to take unpaid vacation. It was time for a more brutal part of her personality to take over. The moment of suspense passed as quickly as it appeared, and the Root ninjas charged at Tsunade with abandon. Tsunade, on the other hand, simply stood in her place and waited for them, opting to take a more defensive approach. The first wave of her would-be attackers finally reached her, and all three of them sprang to the offensive like a well-oiled machine. One from the front, while two others attacked her from the sides. As she was ducking under the high kick from her right side, while also tilting her body to narrowly avoid the stab from her left, Tsunade had to admit the teamwork and organization of these ninjas was quite polished. There were over 40 of them, and yet only 3 attacked at a time, knowing to not overcrowd her, and instead, they spread out in the room in fear of being taken out by some large-scale ninjutsu while also limiting her available place for dodging. Or at least that was the general idea. Tsunade quickly hooked her arm around the elbow of the ninja in front of her, whose punch she evaded, and then she twisted. With a resounding crack, the Root ninja's arm snapped at the elbow, and yet he and his comrades didn't even flinch. The only thing indicating the man even felt his bone breaking was a single muted grunt, as his other hand already whipped towards Tsunade's temple, while he used his now broken limb as an anchor to keep Tsunade in place. Worse yet, the 2 other attackers recognized the opportunity for what it was, and Tsunade found herself about to be knifed to the neck from her left side and kicked to sensitive muscles on her thigh from her right. She could also see 7 other Root members taking advantage of her positioning by throwing kunai in her direction in a way that would not pose a threat to her 3 attackers. Tsunade found herself almost impressed by the flawless coordination. Then again, she was not a normal kunoichi. What would in another situation work, as keeping the opponent in place, didn't really work on her. Exerting her muscles to an inhuman, even for the ninja standards, degree, Tsunade grabbed the shoulder of the man in front of her and effortlessly lifted him into the air, causing him untold pain as his broken bone ground against her steel-hard biceps, before throwing him to the right as if he was yesterday's trash. The thrown body impacted the knife-wielding attacker on her left, sending both of them tumbling on the floor. Tsunade might or might not have used a bit too much force, judging by the cracks that resounded every time the bodies hit the ground. Ah, well, spilled milk and all that. The third attacker wasn't much of a threat, to be honest. His kick aimed at her thigh missed because of the spin necessary to throw her first attacker. Unfortunately for him, Tsunade didn't stop after the throw and used the momentum to swap into a punching motion, caving the third attacker's face before he flew back, right into another Root member who experienced how it felt having his brains paint the ground from the sheer force of impact. It was then that the Root members momentarily stopped, realizing this would not be as easy as they previously envisioned, while Tsunade huffed at her inability to get a rise out of them despite her apparent brutality. Ha! Let's see if I can pull a genuine emotion out of these human machines. Tsunade smirked, enjoying the situation as the kunoichi side in her stirred awake. The fight continued. Tsunade jumped up to avoid the thrown kunais while also throwing a handful back against her assailants. From her 5 kunai, only 2 hit a purchase, telling her the root A and Bu could dodge. Huh. Who knew? This surprised Tsunade for the briefest split of a second, since the strength behind her throw was something no B-ranked ninja could ever evade without getting at least a cut to show for it. Two of the three who managed to dodge were instantly filled as A-ranked threats in Tsunade's brain, causing them to jump right to the top of her to-be-eliminated list, while the last lost a bit of muscle from his upper arm in the attempt. Root didn't have many A-rank shinobi in their midst. They were mostly B-rank, capable, good at working together, ruthless, emotionless, completely fine with dying to get the job done, but not A-rank powerhouses. That told Tsunade the three who dodged were one of the best Danzo had in the room. Danzo did not train powerhouses. He trained capable but controllable assassins. That meant his ninjas had to be easily disposed of the second they did something he didn't like. It wouldn't be good to make someone in Root strong enough to oppose him. Yes, together, his Root ninjas could face and take down A-rankers and even some weaker S-rankers, depending on the circumstances and the acceptable losses ratio. Alone, however, they were mostly high B-rank ninjas who over-specialized in stealth and assassination. Tsunade dropped back to the ground, frowning as she noticed the support pillars in the room having cracks all over them. With a sigh, she let the downward momentum from her fall lead her arm down and slammed her palm into the ground while channeling Mokuton chakra into it. The playtime was over. Wood release? Fuck you! Thick tree trunks smashed through the floor, unstoppably growing upward and causing the Root ninjas to jump around in an attempt to avoid the surprisingly razor-sharp bark on the trees. Worst, however, were the branches that sprang up shortly after. Seeing one of them shredded to gory chunks of meat and organs, the Root ninjas instantly recognized the threat of the wooden hell they found themselves in. They didn't have too much time to contemplate this, though. The created forest got thicker the higher the treetops reached until they hit the roof of the room, causing it to violently shudder as the trees creaked under the sudden pressure put on them. Finding it impossible to grow upwards now that they supported the roof, the trees did something that actually managed to get an emotion out of the scratched and gashed Root ninjas. They grew in volume, spreading to the sides, filling the room in more and more razor-sharp branches that had the same cutting power as wind-enhanced chakra metal. Needless to say, the Roots were reintroduced to despair. Tsunade impassively stood in the middle of the occurring massacre with her eyes closed as she focused her senses to flow her chakra through the trees, guiding their growth and sharpening the bark with a smirk on her face. A girl gotta love her superb chakra control. It was utterly impossible to see anything in the room through the overgrown branches, but that didn't matter as Tsunade could finally sense every living being in the room. Frankly, at first, she only created the forest to make new support pillars for the room. But then she reconsidered. She was not dealing with Danzo's real elites. These were all just grunts. Some of them were skilled, but they were essentially still unimportant, run-of-the-mill grunts. As such, Tsunade decided to use this opportunity for a chakra control practice. The Root ninjas might have had a chance if the fight was fought above the surface. Alas, it was not. They were currently trapped deep underground with nowhere to run now that the environment itself was turned against them, aiming to kill them. Despair gripped their hearts as they realized the hopelessness of the situation, some of them dying completely blank, incapable of feeling even the slightest emotion, while others cursed their fate and the cruelty of the world. Not one of them actually chose to become a Root ninja, and now they would die because of it. Sadly, such was the nature of the shinobi world. 20 seconds. That's how long it took for Tsunade's half-assed, more of a chakra control exercise created on the fly, than a real jutsu wood release technique to shred the Root ninjas to bloody pieces without any way for them to resist as their blood painted the forest crimson. Tsunade, on the other hand, was elated, not because of the death she caused. That didn't even enter her mind. She long ago made peace with her existence as a killer. She became Genin at 6, and killed her first person when she was 6 years and 7 months old. People usually forget and focus on her reputation as a healer, but it is the healers who make for the best killers. The number of lives ended by her hands far outstretched the numbers she saved, and she was considered the best medic in the world. Honestly, Tsunade couldn't really bother caring anymore as she registered the twinge of guilt and showed it into the dark recesses of her mind, forgetting about it a second later. These root ninjas were not worth more thought than the training dummies in her courtyard. No. Tsunade was elated because she slowly started to figure out how to make her forests permanent like Grandpa Hashirama. She simply had to jump and shriek from the sheer joy she felt. Her primary mission and the reason why she even bothered to infiltrate Konoha and Root Base pushed back, Tsunade proceeded to happily whistle and experiment with her newfound knowledge, while the Konoha's underground tunnels changed into an orchestra of pain-filled shrieks, despairing screams, and blood-curdling wails, all melding into one, a soul-chilling symphony supporting her happy tune of whistles and hums. Danzo might have been onto something with his fixation on roots, Tsunade admitted inwardly, as a mischievous smile spread through her face. In that case, let me create the real roots of Konoha. That was the last time anyone could access the underground tunnels of Konoha without fearing for his life because of the living razor-sharp vines that suddenly appeared in there and killed anyone brave enough to venture too far down. Nobody ever discovered what laid in the center of Konoha's underground tunnels. And Tsunade? Well, she had a new safe house. The council meeting finally finished. Tired Danzo arrived home, utterly drained from all the bickering between the Ninja Council and the Civilian Council about who gets to pay what taxes. Not for the first time, he cursed Hiruzen for not slaughtering the impudent, powerless fools on the Civilian Council. Sure, he made good use of them, manipulating them to get what he wanted, but even he could recognize how much their very existence weakened Konoha. Sarutobi sure as hell became more cutthroat after the Uchiha massacre. Danzo let his impassive facade slip into a natural scowl as he remembered that debacle. I didn't even acquire one damn pair of these eyes. Damn Uchihas, damn Itachi. To think he would destroy every single pair of eyes as he killed his clan. I can't even gut his little brother as the twerp doesn't even have his Sharingan awakened yet, he seethed. The Uchiha massacre that happened a few months prior was the biggest mistake of his career as the Yami no Shinobi. The only real haul was Shisui's eye, and while that was marvelous, it still hurt to see all that coordination, all that work, literal years of spreading rumors and distrust against the Uchiha clan go to waste just because he didn't foresee Uchihas utilize something similar to Hyuga's caged bird seal that destroyed their eyes upon their deaths. Worse yet, Konoha lost an entire clan and was weakened without him even getting anything substantial in return. Sarutobi even refused to let him copy the Uchiha Jutsu scrolls, quoting, "They belong to Sasuke." What a load of... The irritated Danzo finally reached his living room, stiffening right after he entered the room. His mind briefly wondered what was wrong before the answer sprang into its forefront as instincts kicked in. He smelt a faint scent of blood. Danzo quickly switched the light on and, for the first time in the last 20 years, he bent at the waist and puked his guts out. His whole living room was caked in liters of blood, pieces of organs, splinters of bones. The worst were the hundreds of eyeballs put on the table, arranged to stare right at him. The most disturbing were the penises mockingly hanging from the ceiling. The most informative was the 267 eyeless and tongueless heads of his root operatives, nailed to the wall of his living room straight through their forehead with wooden spikes. Danzo quickly realized the rest of their bodies was currently scattered through his living room in the likeness of a poorly shredded mush. Giving off such a strong, putrid scent, even he couldn't take it, despite all of his experience. As he retched, Danzo inwardly thanked Kami that 5 of his best ninjas were with him during the meeting, so their heads were still firmly attached to their bodies. Anyone who could cause this would most likely have no problem dealing with them, and it would be a heavy hit to lose Tarun or Fu. Danzo was not a moron nor a fool. He instantly noticed the wooden spikes used to nail the heads to the walls and took it for what it was: a message. It was wood needed to create the chakra paper. It was Mokutan wood only found in the forests around Konoha. Danzo briefly wondered if Hiruzen got far bolder than he imagined, but that notion was quickly forgotten. No, this was not Hiruzen. Danzo refused to believe such an assumption. Pigs would fly sooner than the old shit-flinger monkey learned how to fling his shit again. Taking a deep breath, Danzo looked upwards in a search of a brief reprieve from the gruesome sight and potent smell of blood, only for his eye to widen as he discovered the intestines of his late subordinates nailed into the ceiling and forming a message. A tree with shallow roots can be easily uprooted. By the way, thank you for the sharingans. Sorry for not leaving even one for you. You know how it is. They are quite rare. Signed, your friendly neighbor Yozora. Needless to say, Danzo was not amused.